Hello everyone, welcome to the Analyze India Summit. Today we have two guests with us, Siddharth and Varun. They are together building this amazing tool called Tijori Finance. So let's get started. Hi Siddharth, how are you?
I'm good, Richik. How are you?
I'm doing good. So why don't we start off with you giving us a little bit of a background about how you ended up starting Tijori, what got you interested?
Sure. So basically, just a brief background is Tijori is started by three of us. Me, Varun, and Tejas. Tejas is not couldn't make it for this call. So I mean, it started a few years ago, but when we were investing ourselves, we relied heavily on annual reports and things like that. So that would be our normal trend. So we'd pick up an annual report, study it, study historic reports, study investor presentations, and this was our methodology. We would always track market share. We would always track key metrics which weren't normally available in tools which you see generally. So that got us thinking that, okay, fine, can we make this bigger? And what we also noticed is every investment summit or investment seminar, people would be talking about these metrics, but these are things which are really difficult to track. So step by step, we started building this for like first 10 companies, 100 companies, and then we realized that people appreciated that, right? So when we got
Okay,
speaking to people, we realized that they really cared about this data, but because this was not easy to find, uh, people would just skip it, and that would lead to like incomplete sort of research because this really takes time and effort if you really want to analyze companies. That means really spend time going through call conferences, investor presentations, things like that.
correct.
So we just got down to doing what we used to always do. So we used to always sit down and spend hours analyzing companies. So we just thought if we can structure and standardize that so that it becomes simpler and easier for people to do analysis on companies, then maybe we have something here. So then
Okay,
just step by step, it took us from there.
okay. And what was the year when you started this?
So I think we had various versions, but the first version of this which came out was in end of 2018.
Okay, so
So
it's been about a couple of years now.
yeah, it's been about 2 years now. Yeah.
Okay. And you had any experience investing personally in the past?
Yeah. So Varun, Tejas, and me would always invest in the past. So I mean, it was
Okay,
on our own, nothing serious. We weren't professionally trained. It was just our personal sort of passion to look at the space.
okay,
So we've been
Yeah.
investing from our first paycheck, basically. I mean, initially mutual funds, which just moved into direct equities later on. But
okay.
yeah, we were always interested in that space.
And how did that experience or that knowledge of doing a little bit of investing, how did that help you when you were starting to build Tijori?
No, certainly it helped us a lot because,
Yeah, I
uh,
mean, you know what? So what you see on Tijori is kind of a subset of what we think is useful when we are analyzing companies. I mean, not everything is
Okay,
capturable, but
right.
we try to capture systematically more and more what we think is useful for investors when they're looking to, when they're thinking about putting their money into some companies.
Yeah, so like
okay,
I mean a typical pain point, right? So like suppose just as an example, if you are interested in a company, then not only do you need to study that company, but you need to compare against its competition, and so studying a company takes time, then understanding the competition and sector takes a lot of time. So essentially, what
right.
we focused on while building with this was our pain points. Can I easily compare against a company, a sector, metrics, so that it is like essentially whatever pain points we were feeling while we used to do this manually is what we try to automate.
Okay. And the name Tijori is interesting. How did you think about this name?
I think I don't actually remember how
Yeah,
we came up with this name, but
yeah. So
yeah,
like it
Okay,
it was
actually,
okay.
just
I
one
mean,
of those days.
yeah, we just
Well, doesn't matter because your tool is very useful. A lot of people have commented on it. A lot of people have been using it. So why don't you just go ahead and run us through, show us the features,
Sure.
any tips, any tricks that we can use,
Certainly.
and anything that makes our life as investors easier.
Right.
Sure. Maybe I'll start, Siddharth.
Yeah, go ahead, Varun.
So, I think before we start showing you, till where what all we've built and the features and stuff like that, maybe we can give you sort of a little bit about our thought process on how we approach or how we think people approach investing in general.
Sure.
Because once you know the assumptions that we make, then the sort of features that we've built will kind of follow through very easily. Okay.
Sure. Go ahead.
So
Sure.
maybe for 1 minute, uh, we can forget about we can forget about stocks and all that, and just think about, in general, supposing you were to buy say a phone. Okay. So supposing you want to buy a phone, the first thing you'll need there, I mean, there are 200 different, I don't even know how many different models of phones out there.
Plenty.
Of all the phones, you'll need to zero down into maybe 4 5 where you really want to buy it. I mean, it'll be based on your features such as price and maybe brand, and I don't know what criteria different people have. But
Correct.
of the 100 200 phones, you would want to first narrow down into 4 5 phones. Correct. Once you narrow down into 4 5 phones, you will 100% do at least a little bit of research on those phones. So what feature does it have versus its competition, and how is it priced, and maybe you'll ask a friend who's very good with phones and knows everything about phones, or maybe you'll go onto some websites and stuff like that. So from the 200, you will first zero down into 5, and from those 5 you maybe will study a bit more and you'll zero down to the phone that you want to buy.
Correct.
Okay. Once you want to buy, then it's a decision, where do I buy? You look at, okay, maybe I'll buy it on Flipkart, or maybe I'll go to my neighborhood store, or I know this person who has a store and I get a discount there, or whatever. And once you buy it, you have the phone with you, but after a year, 18 months, 2 years, or 3 years, you're again thinking, oh, should I buy a new phone? Or maybe you're always looking out, like, which are the new phones out there in the market and stuff like that. Okay,
Right.
I think that's a pretty typical cycle of people out there when they're buying not just a phone, but any product. Like if you think about a washing machine or a phone, you're going through these 4 steps. So the first step is, of the universe of phones, you need to narrow down into 5 or 10. So you need to discover the phones that you're into. We call that step 1, discovery. Once you've discovered the 5-10 phones that you really want to zero down and do your research on, then you start studying. We call that progressing into step 2, or research. Once you've done your research and you narrow down on one phone, you need to buy it. We call that transaction. And once you are past the transaction phase and you bought your phone, you start tracking what other phones are out there in the market and decide when you should buy your next one. That's called tracking. Okay, so I'll just summarize. We think people, not just when they buy stocks, but when they buy anything, a phone, a TV, a washing machine, a life insurance policy, or whatever, they go and they jump in through these 4 hoops.
Right.
The first hoop is discovery. The second is research. Then once you do your research, you do your transaction. And once you finish your transaction, you are into your tracking mode. And then you circle back and go back to step 1. Okay. Maybe the difference in stocks is there's a step 0 also, which is education, where people have to tell you this is a power of compounding and whatnot, which many people are focusing on. But in general, there are these 4 steps. First, discovery. From discovery, you move to research. From research, you move to transacting. And after transacting, you are tracking. So if you can picture those 4 boxes, the third box, which is transaction, is basically what, say, the big brokers like Zerodha and Paytm and all are focused on. So they help you execute at a very high quality and a very good price. And the transaction phase is something that we are not into. I mean, we're very clear on that. The transaction phase is something that we are not into.
Okay.
So the other 3 boxes when you're trying to buy a stock, so there are 4,000-5,000 stocks you could probably buy. Of those 4,000-5,000, you need to boil it down to say 10-20 that you can really study, which is the discovery phase. From the 10, 20 that you boil down to, you want to do research. That's the research phase. Then you actually buy it. You go onto your favorite broker's platform, and once you buy it, you need a portfolio tracker to actually track your investments. How is it doing? How is the competition doing? What are the corporate actions? And get alerts on your company's performance. That's the tracking phase.
And
So we are
also
in
think
boxes
about
1,
like
2, and
exiting.
4. Yeah. So I just pause you, Richie. Do you have any questions till now?
No, I was just saying that in the tracking mode, you also may have to think about exiting if things don't work out.
Right.
Exactly. Exiting, buying more, maybe buying some shares. What I've done is even bought into the competition, and I think even they are as good. It's different, but you need to track.
So, but yeah, like when you have something in your portfolio, does it make sense to hold it? Is it as good as it was when you actually bought it? You systematically need to have a methodology to keep tracking those companies as well.
I mean, the frequency of tracking differs. Some people track every 15 minutes. Some people track once in 15 days. That of course is up to them, but you need to track. It's not. I mean, there are very few
Right.
people who will buy today and won't look at it for next 10 years. And when I mean don't look at it, I mean don't look at it. You will check once a month, once in 15 days at least. You will check. So you need to track what's happening.
Right.
So yeah, that is the fourth box. So we kind of think of buying financial products as jumping through these 4 hoops. We are not in hoop 3, we are in hoop 1, 2, 4. There are many people out there who are in hoop 0, which is kind of unique to finance, where you have to educate people. You never need to educate someone that you need to buy a phone. So that's not there in other products, but we are in hoop 1, 2, and 4. So, so coming to the first bit, which is discovery. So like I said, there are 5,000 companies out there. There's no way you can go really deep into all of them and track them, because I mean, they're a moving target. So it's like the facts about them will change every day. So maybe of the 5,000, you need to zero down first into a set of 10, 20 companies, right? So how we think people do that is, like, say, I mean, because we are looking at, because our tool is made for long-term investors, how you would typically think of the first picking a set of 15, 20 companies you want to do further research in is not generally how people force you to think. You won't think, oh, I want companies with ROC more than 25%. That's not how ideas usually come to someone's mind. What someone would think is, say, I want to invest in pharma companies who are very exposed to the US, or pharma companies who are very exposed to India. Basically, everyone thinks in terms of ideas, and it's those ideas which help you filter down from the 5,000 companies to the 5, 10, 15 that you're really interested in. So the first thing that we built was a discovery tool where you filter down based on your ideas. So maybe Siddharth, if you could go to our filter module.
So on our home page, we've got a filter module here. You can just check it out.
So in our filter module, we want you to first discover companies based on the ideas that you have in your head. Like, okay, I want to, I don't know, so that just maybe try some, okay, yeah. So I want to invest in pharma companies who make, who get revenue from the USA. So imagine if you had to actually search for this, who get more than 50% of their revenue from the USA. How would you go about it? It would be an endless task where you have to go. But for us, you can type it in natural language, click on search, and we exactly boil down to the pharma companies who get more than 50% of their revenue from USA.
So, I mean, Ruchik, this was like one of the typical problems we faced initially.
Yeah.
Like we would read many themes in the papers. Like, I mean, just as an example, today Europe is under lockdown. Okay. So when Europe is under lockdown, the question comes to us as, I mean, the natural question to any investor is which companies have exposure, right? So if you think about it, there was no way we could do this earlier. We would just, at the top of our heads, know 2, 3 companies, but we would not know it definitively. So this was a real pressing problem for us. So we designed it so that you can say companies with exposure to, I mean, you can just state whatever you want as a theme or an idea, and that could be the beginning point for your filter. All right, so now
Yeah.
it's 173
Okay.
companies
Wow.
with, you can say, with more than 25% exposure to Europe, or you can define it in that. Okay, so then it reduces to 53. So like a typical filter, you can keep increasing to see that, okay, fine. If Europe is genuinely in shutdown, and then these are the companies which are most likely to be affected, and these are the guys with the maximum exposure, right?
Okay. Okay.
So typically, I mean, what we saw as a small gap in the process of discovery is people generally think in these themes like, okay, I want to think of companies that have exposure to rural India or whatever it is, electric vehicles or some sort of themes. But when you go down to start filtering, you always start with market cap less than, ROC greater than, a typical financial related filter. So we wanted to try and build this tool to bridge that gap, right?
Wow, this is like totally reimagining. Normally, there's a quantitative approach, like you said. You have to put in
Yeah.
like companies greater than so much ROC or so much debt to
Yeah.
equity.
So
Here, it's like how your mind thinks, like in terms of
exactly.
ideas. You just
Exactly.
put that. This Tijori allows you to
Right,
put in ideas and then filter out.
right.
Um,
So
Exactly.
this is
So
another.
just to be clear, you can add financials here as well. Maybe so that you want to,
I can add the market capitalization or
I mean, whatever field you could possibly think of. You said ROC, so maybe RO.
yeah,
So that maybe you can click on that add. See the whole list of fields there. Just click on add a column.
yeah, this
Oh
one.
yeah, list of available fields. And these are all the fields that are present there. So, I mean, if you just click on ratios, you can see there are like a lot of ratios there. Just add it to your filter. I want return on assets great or 7-year average quick ratio greater than 1 or whatever.
Right,
And you can further refine. But the basic idea is there are maybe 5,000 companies out there. We refine them to research. How we
mhm.
refine, how we are forced to refine them right now is through financial metrics like ROC
Okay.
greater than 20, which doesn't really mean much because we first
Right.
think in terms of ideas. So our first step to refine is like business data. Like I want pharma companies who sell to Europe and who then have ROC more than 30, and that's how we kind of think, and that's the kind of tool that we set out to build. I mean, obviously, because this is a search engine based on natural language, it's a ever improving process.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the more search queries we see, the better it gets. I mean, just like Google or whatever.
So I mean, today there are a
But
lot of
yeah, it's
queries.
early days, but
Yeah,
it works pretty well. Nowadays we get quite a few. I mean, every day we get queries numbering in the thousands. So it's getting better and better every day,
It's
and
learning
should get.
every day, and in 1 year, it's going to be even better.
yeah.
Yeah, because it keeps getting better. The more search queries it sees, the better it gets. So,
Awesome. Awesome.
yeah,
So Varun, do you want to run through one more query?
maybe yeah, we can go through one more query and then
Move
we
on.
can
Yeah.
move on to the next bucket. So, Siddharth, you want to go?
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite query?
So let's
I
see.
think chemical companies everyone's talking about today, or you can type whatever. So okay. So people want to know which chemical companies have. People always want to find niche chemical companies. So maybe 20% is too much. So that can you do 60% or something?
Right.
Yeah. So you'd most probably find extremely niche. Yeah, only 22 companies found. But this is a place. So Siddharth, in add a column, can you add market cap?
So I'll add it here so I can reduce the filter. So I can say market cap less than maybe 5,000.
Yeah. Yeah. And so now if you just zoom out a bit and think of what you've done, you have found niche small cap chemical companies. But to actually go do something like that would take you a lot of time. What
Oh
we
yeah.
try to do is basically make that a 5 minute or no, I mean not even a 5 minute job.
5 seconds.
Yeah. So now if you go to page 2, page 3, Siddharth.
Yeah.
So you can see, if you see, I'm sure many of these companies you would not have heard of. Like, for example, I have not heard of Excel Industries. Maybe a lot of other people have. But you can see how much revenue they make from chemicals and how much market share they have and in what product. and in which geography as well. So this Excel Industries has 60% market share in DTC India. I don't even know what DTC is,
Yeah.
but this is the basic idea.
Right.
This is pretty powerful. But
Yeah.
it would normally take few hours, I guess, because you'd have to read annual reports, forums, you'd
Yeah.
have to do Google searches, do all kinds
Yeah.
of research.
Yeah,
Correct.
one of the what do you call? I said chemical just now because one of the most queried. I mean, the most queried sector nowadays was either chemicals or APIs. I mean, for our search engine,
Right.
and yeah. So before I move on to the next box, as we call it, Ruchi, do you have any questions?
I'm good. Supriya, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Supriya, do you have any questions?
No, you can continue.
Okay. So let me just do a quick 10-second recap. We said we have these four boxes: discovery, research, transaction, and tracking. Transactions, we are going to put a crossover because we are not into it. In discovery, to boil down to your 10-15 companies, we've showed you one of the ways that we think we've built a tool which is differentiated, which is a natural language search engine. But of course, once you discover the 10-15 companies, you'd want to research more on it. So which puts us in the next box, which is research.
So if you just take an example, like, so suppose you run through a filter or through any ways, if you pick up the newspaper and you come across Airtel. Airtel is a very big company, but just for example's sake, we take it. You can just key it in over here. And the first thing we focus on is the business overview of the company. Okay, so the financial parameters are important and are there, but we first focus on the business parameters. So we tell you immediately Airtel has a 27 market share in mobile, and this is what they hold in broadband sector. Then the next aspect is we give you a business breakdown, that is their revenue and geography exposure. Okay, so in the product exposure, you immediately, this gives you a first glance on what the company does. I mean, now today for a company like Airtel, this is maybe meaningless, but if you pick nicher and smaller companies, then this becomes very useful. In a quick second, you know exactly which chemicals they cater to or what services they do, things like that. Okay. So in Airtel's case also, it will be interesting to know how much Africa exposure is there and is this growing year on year or not. So again, to check, these were things which we used to constantly track. And so we sort of found a way to systematically bring it onto a platform for people to track. But a cool part is our operational metrics. Okay, so these are like basically industry or company specific metrics. And the way we like to think about it is, if you were the CEO of Airtel or if you were the owner of a company, what would be the core 5-6 metrics which you should essentially track, right? So like if you look at a telecom company, definitely an important thing is the number of subscribers. So here you can systematically see how many subscribers Airtel has on a month to month basis. Okay. So we see Airtel as 32. And like I was saying earlier, our biggest pain point was not only analyzing a company, analyzing its competition. So we made these graphical interfaces where you can easily add competition and see exactly how they're doing. So immediately you're able to see how Jio has been growing so fast and Vodafone Idea has been dipping during that same period, right?
Oh, that is great.
Yeah. So for a sector in telecom, we said another important aspect is the ARPU, as how much they generate per user per month. So this also, in a systematic manner, we are able to scrape it out from industry bodies, things like that. So just as an example, I mean, here you see it. So like where we get our data varies. Okay, so like we focus on what we deem as reliable data sources, which is typically anything from the company. So it could be an annual report, investor presentation, company filings. And we also look at some important sector level data, which is like, could be like TRAI. We deem TRAI as a reliable data source, RBI, things like that. So that's our data feed. Okay.
Yeah, also I mean, sometimes company and industry body gives conflicting data, so we need to kind of have a hierarchy of what is more important. So we would take RBI over a company's filings, for example.
Okay. Just to ask you a question. So you mentioned that some of this data comes from company filings. How soon does the website update it? So
So it
let's say
should,
the filing came out yesterday. Like, so how does this get updated?
yeah. So if the filing comes out, comes out yesterday. Right now we are on a 48-hour delay cycle,
Sorry, am I
which
audible?
is not that great, I would say. I mean, we need to get faster. But right now it would come out within say 48 hours.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, if you asked me 6 months back, it was taking 5 days. Now it's taking 2 days. So hopefully it'll soon take 2 hours.
Yeah, that's good. And these operational metrics, how do you decide? Like, okay, in telecoms, it's ARPUs, it's number of mobile subscribers. In some other industry, it'll be something else.
Yeah.
So
So
how do you
Siddharth,
figure that out?
can you go to say hospital or something widely different? Siddharth?
Sorry, there was some audio issues. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry,
Yes, we can hear you.
sorry, Ruchi. Yeah. Anyway,
Okay, I was saying, so Ruchi was asking, we've tracked this for telecom, but what about say for,
So these operational metrics,
right.
basically, if it's ARPUs and mobile subscribers for telecom, for another
yeah,
industry like a hospital, like it'll be hospital beds or something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how
yeah.
do
So
you
can you
figure
go
out
to,
what metrics to track?
Right. So if we just take another hospital, for example, if we go to Narendra, so their key metrics would be what is the average daily revenue per occupied bed. So here you can compare it to Aster, you can compare it to Fortis, you can compare it to the competition. So you're able to see that okay, Narayana charges much less per occupied bed. So here, if you see again, their metrics are completely different. It is average length of stay, their occupancy rate, operational beds, things like that.
yeah,
Correct.
maybe last one we can check is maybe banks, because nowadays we get a lot of banks
Right.
companies being researched. So yeah, I mean, you can see that market share in credit cards, mobile banking, advances, deposits, stuff like that.
Right.
And here the metrics will be completely different. So it'll be net interest margin, gross NPA, CASA. Maybe you can click on one of the metrics like say CASA, so that or
Sure.
whatever. Yeah, gross NPA is fine. And you can add any bank. So add SBI, so that, or add some bank that nobody cares about, like United Bank or something. Okay, this is a
Also, you can also add a company.
yeah, whichever you can add whichever
Okay.
bank you want.
So what we've
As
done,
long as that company also has the gross NPA metric,
Yes,
you'll be able to add it.
yes.
Okay,
what
okay,
we've done is
brilliant.
we tried to make the metrics standardized across the board. So suppose we define for a bank, we're taking this as a metric. We will try and seek from each of their company filings or from industry
Yeah. And
extract.
of course, there's no reason to believe our data. So that can you click source?
Yeah. So you can click on. So anywhere you can click on the source, and
So there,
yeah.
and it gets highlighted exactly from where we got it.
Okay.
So one aspect, and what we've tried to do is like, I mean, this was again another pain point. We would read many research reports which would quote figures and say, okay, retail banking of HDFC is 46%, right? Sometimes we would see conflicting data and we won't even know which one to believe. So everything we've done in the site, we've tagged the sources. You can just click on the source, you'll go straight to HDFC's, in this case, it's the annual report, into that
Okay.
segment, and you'll be able to see that information. So the way we like to think about it is this is the first step for your research. So if you're interested, go to the source, read more, understand more about this aspect. We're going to take you straight to the area where we got this information.
Okay.
So maybe if I take 20 seconds and just give you an quick way of how we think, Ruchi. So basically, in all the phases that we are interested in the investment process, we notice that people generally only have access to data which is highly structured, which is like companies are filing their financials in table format and all, and table format data is quite commoditized out there. So if you want a P&L statement and balance sheet and all, it's pretty easy to get it, right?
Yep.
For HDFC Bank. But if you want the unstructured stuff, which also happens to be the really important stuff or just as important stuff, To get
Yes.
that in a standardized format is not simple, right? So
Right.
what one of our core, IP is how to structure all that unstructured data out there and try to make it as commoditized as the row and column kind of data that we see in for P&L, balance sheet, and all the financial information and price charts and all. Like
Okay.
just imagine if HDFC Bank had called their net income something and Kotak called it something else, and there was no way you could have compared the two. We take it for granted now that it's all standardized, but it wasn't the case many years ago. And we
Yes.
are hoping to do that for the unstructured data as well.
That is brilliant.
Right.
Okay. So where we're getting at is like the market share in credit cards or the gross NPA. These are all highly unstructured data which we want to structure
Yeah.
to make it comparable, to make it you can view it in a historical trend. Otherwise, everyone's been through that phase where you go to a broker's report in one quarter it says one thing, next quarter the previous quarter's data is something different, and you don't know whether historical was correct or not, and you're stuck in that mess.
Right.
And then you don't know how to compare to the other because the data is available from two different brokerage houses and two different reports. You're wondering, should you even compare it or not? We are looking to get rid of all that time waste activities and just kind of standardize it in one place.
Right.
Okay. Got it.
So the next aspect is like, suppose as an example, you have zeroed in on HDFC. A is you would compare the metrics against the competition like we showed here. B is if
Kotak, ICICI, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to compare the business, we've got a module known as benchmarking. So when you click on benchmarking, the first thing we show you is all the metrics which were available on the first page, so that you immediately are able to see it against the banks.
Yeah, this a lot of people use.
Yeah. So then we've also got a few financial parameters, which are key financial parameters, but we are working on modifying this. So soon you will be able to define what are the parameters you would want to compare the competition on. Okay.
Okay.
Similarly, we've got something for shareholding where you compare against the competitors.
This is again row and table data. I mean, apart from the operational metrics, what Siddharth showed you.
Yeah. But this is something new which we just built. Okay. So now what we are allowing people to do is compare business metrics against each other. So for instance, if you look at HDFC, if you just think of HDFC, ICICI and Kotak, yes, they're all banks and all private banks. But now if you look at their main revenue source for HDFC, it's 46% from consumer finance versus much, much less in the other two segments. So their focus is completely different. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, it's a very important thing for investors. I mean, it's very easy to peg two companies as competition, but when you actually look closer, it's important for an investor to understand exactly on what parameters they compete and what parameters they don't, right?
Right.
So this page over here gives you that ability for you to compare on each parameter in terms of the business metrics. How do they compare against the competition?
And you can add any company you want, and it standardizes on the fly. So just add Axe or State Bank, whatever you want, and add Bandhan Bank. I added it yesterday. Can you add Bandhan Bank to that? No, BAN. Yeah. So I realized this yesterday that Bandhan gets 86% from consumer finance. So it's subtle things like these which come out when you compare business aspects of companies. And again, you can imagine, how long it would take for you to compare the business of these 5 banks when you're deciding which one to invest in, like the segments from which it gets its data, the location wise. Just Siddharth, go down the borrowing breakup.
Yeah.
Can you go down, Siddharth?
Yeah.
Borrowing, and I guess we'll have the MPAs come from which sector and stuff like that, non-priority, priority, and all that. So basically, this is again unstructured data which is getting structured on the fly by the software when you are adding or removing companies.
So, I mean, Ruchik, for Varun and me, this used to be Excel files full of many, many sheets which we used to merge together as columns to try and figure out who does what. Okay,
I can imagine.
yeah, so I mean, this was very, a lot of fun for us when we finally managed to be able to automate this process,
Okay.
because this is really painful for us. I mean, it's not like you will invest in a Bandhan, but at least when I'm focusing on A and B, I need to quickly understand what everyone else around me is doing. Are they in the
Yes.
space?
Yeah.
And if
Who's a
it's
corporate bank? Who's a retail
yeah,
bank? It
here
kind
we
of
need to double down.
quantifies it in one place.
Yeah, because
Correct.
it's very easy. I mean, of course, now investors are getting way more sophisticated, but it's very easy to peg companies as pharmaceutical companies. But no, that's not the case. In pharma, they specialize in many things, and this sort of gives investors a quick view to know exactly who focuses on what, right?
Yes. Just at a glance, basically, it's just few seconds. Just add companies, and
Exactly.
it just presents everything.
Exactly. Otherwise, this is a step which many people skip because the sheer effort and time this would take, right?
Yes. True.
So, I mean, of course, now I'll just switch to the financials tab. So, yeah, so like, I mean, we've got the 10 years. I mean, of course, the share prices, you can compare share prices against any companies. We've got 10 years financial statements, which is pretty standard for everything, right? And what we
I
allow,
mean, financials we have. Um, I mean, what anyone would want.
yeah.
They're looking to improve, but I mean, again, like this is highly commoditized data, so this is not
So what is
a
different
big
with
focus for us.
us is every data point you see, we allow you to plot because this is typically how we feel you generally assess tons of data. When you look at a sheet and all that, you'd like to look at it graphically to notice the spikes, right? So any line item anywhere on Tijori is plottable in some manner. So you're able
Yeah.
to
Can you
input.
go to the ratio, Siddharth?
And I just noticed that you can also share this chart, right?
Yeah. So you pick any chart, you can share it on Twitter, you can take a screenshot, whatever you want. So we've made it easy. So many times what happens is people do some analysis and things stand out. And we see on Twitter and all that people share that, which is, I mean, so we're creating a tool for you to share your sort of insights which you've come across in an easy manner.
Can this be shared on our blog? Like if we write a blog on a company or
Yeah.
like an investment article or something?
So people write to us asking for permission, but it's perfectly fine. You can go ahead and take it.
Okay.
Yeah. So similarly with the shareholding, we've got pretty standardized data. So what we have here is the 10-year trend to notice how FIIs are, where DIIs stand, promoter holding, things like that. Okay.
This is again commoditized.
This is commoditized. So the next aspect when we look at a company is, okay, fine. Now I've been looking at HDFC Bank. I've studied the bank. I've studied the competition. I noticed that, okay, fine, HDFC is still the strongest player. Next thing is you need to understand the sector in which that company resides. So for that, we built sector screens. So you can either click on it over here, or in our landing page, we've got a sector button here. So you can come here and just type banking.
Okay.
Right. So to start off with, we've got an index here. So here you are able to see private banks versus public banks. So just as an example, if you want to compare it against the aviation sector.
I think I'll put TJI, sir. Okay.
So you can just compare it. So we've built these indices. So you're able to see that, okay, on a 3-year basis or whatever, on a certain time period, how a company performs or how a sector or an index compares, right? So we've got very, very niche indices which we've built over here. The next aspect is the market share. Okay. So what you saw in the beginning, now here you are able to compare banking deposits across all companies.
So this was what we were talking about, standardization and where it helps. Like one bank says I have this much market share, another bank says this much. If you add all of them, it will be more than 100%. So we've come up with a standardized methodology and systematically updated methodology so that you can compare their market share in one place.
Got it.
Right. So mobile banking, you're able to see exactly who stands at what particular point of time. In housing
loans,
exactly how these get. Okay.
NI, net business, whatever.
Yeah. So again, next we go to sector level operational metrics. this is across the sector, which means the sum of all banks where advances stand, where deposit stands. So this is just to give investors an indicator where the trends in the sector are moving up to the right or not. Okay. So you're able to see whether, I mean, of course, this is this is COVID dip in April, March, April, but you're able to see exactly at a macro level where these things stand. So we've even got UPI transaction data. You're able to see how this is skyrocketing. Varun, anything else you
Okay.
want to add here?
Yeah, no, just coming back, just can you go up to that UPI data, Sudha?
Yeah.
So can you hover on the last data point? Yeah, so you're coming back to that speed we were talking about. Like you see, this was released yesterday and it's already on there, the November data.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's 2nd of
It's
December.
less
So
than 2 days ago.
Yeah.
yeah. So that's what I'm saying. We have a max of 48 hours, but it used to be 5 days. Now it's 2 days. Hopefully it'll be 1 day soon. And I mean, we are
Okay.
obviously not going to stop improving. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great.
So we think that these kind of data points are useful. So like just as another example, what we came across recently is in the this is our asset management sector. Like what we noticed was we've got something about this is the market share for broking accounts. And then here you can, even if you're interested in ICICI Securities or HDFC, it's really, really important to see how these private players are holding up, right? So over the last 3 years, Zerodha stocks have actually gained and eaten up the market share of all the listed players, right? So
So you've
it's
also listed on private companies as well
not
in
all.
some cases.
Yeah. So go to automobile. It happens that most commercial banks are listed, or I think there's a rule that all have to be listed. But for market share, it's important that we track every given company because I'll just give you an example. Can you go to the auto screen, Siddharth?
Sure.
Like at least for me, I haven't invested in the auto sector, but I keep wondering. Like I see Kia everywhere. Like how much of the market has it taken? I mean that's important for me to know. So if you can go to the market share. Yeah. So you can see Kia Motors right now. It's not listed obviously, and it has 6% of the market already. And
Yes.
we do it across all 2-wheeler, 3-wheeler, 4-wheeler, tractor, CV. So can you go to tractors, Siddharth?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I don't know which. I think international tractors is not listed in India for sure. So you get what I'm saying, right? These are 11%, 12% of the market. So there's no way they should be ignored.
Yeah. So the thing is,
So-
like generally what we noticed as a mistake would be like, if I just take asset management, if someone's like looking for a listed player, he will study other listed players. But
Right.
sometimes at least in sectors like this, you really need to study the big private players and at least understand are they moving at an exponential pace or not, or at least be aware of where things stand. So
Correct.
so what we try to bring out is wherever possible, we've pulled out the key private players so that this gives you that picture and you as an investor have a clear footing of how things stand at a sector level.
Got it.
Okay. So, if you notice in all our sector screens, we do not have like text or explanations about what is happening or any paragraphs. That's primarily because our entire site is pulling out active data points. Okay. So we are updating maybe this there are different frequencies at which this updates. So it's just graphs and charts and data points. So updating this, we feel, is enough of a picture for you to understand the sector.
Got it. Very visually appealing and easy to understand.
Yeah. Okay, then Varun, should we just touch the macro page?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so companies research we showed you, companies sit inside a sector that we showed you. All the sectors obviously sit inside India. So we want a quick glance of what's happening at a macro level for India. You can come and check it out here. Okay. I mean, this has all the indicators that you should, or would care about. Not all, maybe most. It's all in one page and it all shows the year-on-year growth. So if you want GST collection, it's there. This is updated once a day. So I think GST November data will be updated by tomorrow.
Yeah.
But yeah. So one thing I can show you is, can you go to life insurance premiums, for example, so that. So here you can see life insurance premiums industry wide was growing at 31% for this month. You click plus, you can see how all the companies inside it is growing. So LIC, which is again coming to our listed unlisted players, are important
Right.
argument which he just gave you. You can see LIC is going at 36.1%, which is a lot.
Yes.
And of course, if you're interested in any company here, then just click on it and go straight to their page.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So, I mean, I think we've spoken quite a bit about the research. We can,
Yeah, we can move on.
you know, we've done the discovery, then we went on to research. We're not doing execution or transaction, and the last bit is obviously
Tracking.
tracking.
Yeah.
So that brings us to what's work in progress right now. So what we're coming up with is two things. One is a portfolio tracker, initially just for stocks,
Yeah.
and second
Okay.
is to do and second is we'll get to later. But this is a portfolio tracker that we are building right now. This is
Right
work
now
in
this
progress.
is-
Maybe Siddharth, you want to walk them through?
Yeah, so our portfolio tracker is not yet available. So we're just demoing it because in a couple of weeks this should be out. So
Okay.
like Varun was saying, this is a critical leg in that investor's journey. That means once you buy it, how do you actively track it? So the first page is where someone would just add the portfolio and track all their investments, gain, loss, pretty standard.
Okay.
In the performance analysis, here we add your portfolio value here, and you can compare it to any company. So just say from the beginning, that's your first investment. If instead of your portfolio, you're invested in Reliance, you'll be able to see where it stands.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically what we're building is a portfolio index here, and then you can compare it to any indices or any company to see exactly where it stands.
Okay.
Then is a simple thing where we are able
Just to be clear, Siddharth, just go up. This might be a little subtle, but what this yellow Reliance graph is showing is every time you had invested in your supposing yesterday or 1 year back I had put 10,000 in my portfolio. Instead of that, if I had put 10,000 in Reliance, what would have happened? So it's a capital weighted kind of gain. It's not just how did Reliance do versus your portfolio's NAV. It's every time I invested in my portfolio, what if I had invested in any benchmark you choose, which over here happens to be Reliance?
Yeah, so I mean, Richard, this becomes useful if sometimes you compare your portfolio against a mutual fund, for example, and then you
Okay.
realize that maybe that mutual fund is outperforming you. Then you have to ask yourself some questions, right? So
Sure.
it just gives you that kind of a visibility. Here you are able to track every company in your portfolio and their recent performance. Okay.
Okay.
This is a pretty cool one. We look at portfolio versus mutual fund. So we treat your portfolio as a mutual fund, and based on how you've structured your portfolio, we rank it against similarly designed mutual funds. So that means based on their
Interesting.
asset weightage, we say that okay, fine, similar mutual funds are A, B, and C. Then you're able to look at your risk adjusted returns and see, are you higher than mutual funds or lower. So this is, I mean, you
Okay.
may have your own strategies, but at least this gives you an indicator for where you stand over a 3-year period.
I see.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
So you can benchmark your performance.
exactly.
Yeah, this whole benchmarking against Nifty and all, I mean, the alternate to your running your own portfolio, at least how Siddharth and me think, the alternate to us buying stocks is investing in a mutual fund, right? I mean, so that
Yeah.
should be our benchmark first.
Yeah.
I see. One more question I have is you said that users will have to input their portfolio.
Mhm.
Are there any plans or any ways you could integrate this with broker like a Zerodha or whoever it is,
Yes.
so that it automatically pulls up
I'm
everything?
sure this is a request which is going to come out a lot. Right now,
Okay.
it is just a manual addition process. That's the first version which will come out. But very soon, our next step is to integrate with the existing platform. So it's very easy for you to upload because not too many people are going to have the patience to sit and manually add every single
Yeah, when we say integrate, meaning most of the brokerages allow you to download an Excel of your transaction. So you download that Excel and upload it here, and we'll take care of the rest.
Okay.
Okay, it does. I mean, not a deep integration where we are inside their platform.
Right. It's not like a real-time thing. It's like you still have to do one step, but it's very easy. It's just downloading the Excel and putting it up here.
Right.
Okay.
So this module will give you visibility. These two modules gives you visibility about your company's recent performance. So it's in a single page where you track key metrics. So you can define these metrics. So you can say, I want to constantly look at their sales or their profit margins or whatever you want. And quarter on quarter, you're able to toggle and see exactly what performance, who's dipping, things like that, instead of going to 5-10 different pages, right? So
Yes.
similarly here with the shareholding. Now, when we come to exposure, Varun, you just want to run through this?
Yeah, sure. So if you buy like 20 stocks, you first want to know where your risk is coming from. I mean, we define risk as volatility here. So you can see, like, for example, let me see, Balkrishna Industries is 31% of your portfolio, but about 35% of your risk. Maybe with such little difference, it doesn't come out. But sometimes I've seen that I've bought some really small companies and it's like 5% of my portfolio, but 30% of my portfolio's volatility is coming from that one stock.
Okay.
So when you have those kind of exposure, then it really helps.
Yeah.
One thing, so we are already using this internally, and one thing where it's helping me for sure is if you go to revenue by region, Siddharth.
Yeah.
So we bought so many companies, or revenue by product also. We buy so many companies. I didn't have visibility before as to where, like, the end revenue of those companies, where is it coming from? You get what I'm saying? So supposing I buy all the banks, then 100% of my revenue will come from the banks. And right now, when I used to use another portfolio tracker. So it'll just tell me 100% of your exposures to India, but that's not true because many pharma companies that have bought 50% of their, revenue is coming from outside India.
Right.
So if you see for this portfolio, how much is that? It's like 11% of your revenue is coming from North America. Then can you click plus? Can you go inside North America?
No, there's no data.
Okay, we don't have more granular. But in Europe, you can see 18% of your portfolio's revenue comes from Europe. Of that, all these countries, Germany is 1% and stuff like that. So for me, that was useful.
Wow,
Just to
this is
know
a
that.
great feature. I mean, you've taken this to a new level. Normally, it's for a stock. We just spoke about that. For a stock, what's the revenue? Where is it coming from? But now you translated that into your portfolio.
Right.
Exactly. So, like, I'm sure you've been through this. You bought 20 stocks. In the end, what is the percentage of revenue coming from Europe? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
So I've also, what I've done, sometimes I've done it is if I've invested in a mutual fund, you put it in here and then you see from where that mutual fund is getting revenue, because it's impossible to know otherwise.
Yeah.
So you can see by product as well.
Right.
You have 38% from auto ancillary, but we tell you that in auto ancillary, 90% of your portfolio is coming from tires. So 27% of your portfolio is coming from tires.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So it gives a detailed breakdown of from what products and from what geographies you're getting your your portfolio is getting its revenues from. So next time if you're looking to buy a tire company, you would want to know that anyway your portfolio is consisting of 30% tire companies. Are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah. I think this feature can be expanded so much. It's endless. You can even look at suppliers, like who is the supplier of your portfolio and whether
raw
that supplier is in trouble or raw materials, or there are so many things you can do with this.
So the thing is, this is still version 1 of our portfolio. But one of the important things we track is, like Varun kept saying, it's the unstructured stuff or the stuff which is not usually found, right? So we always track companies' raw materials, just as an example, okay, as one of the other things we track. So that's another module which will come in the portfolio soon. So you'll be able to see, okay, how much exposure do you actually have to crude oil, or do you have to vinyl acetate monomer, or things like that, right?
Okay.
So that gives you that visibility that, okay, I'm adding these three companies, which I think are very diverse, but they're all relying on the same raw material. Hence, it's a risk. Now, whether it's a
Yes.
worthy enough risk or not is every investor's decision to take. But at least we as a platform will bring you that visibility, because many of these
Got it.
things are hidden beyond many layers, which you'll never even realize.
That's just great.
Right. So here's another thing, like how it shows you how correlated two companies are. So, I mean, sometimes you may think I'm buying Avanti Feeds and another random company, but in reality, historically, both the prices of these two companies move in tandem, right? So again, it's just
Okay.
another risk aspect you need to be aware of. Each
Okay.
investor is different, but we are just bringing, I mean, essentially what this page is doing is focusing on various risk aspects and at least bringing you that visibility.
Great.
Okay.
I think even money managers will benefit. It's not just investors. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
you're
true.
covering a whole range of people here.
That's true. See, because money managers, many times they have their own funds, and sometimes they will not be able to answer these questions because it's just too much data to see through to get to these answers. So now we'll be able to automate it for anyone.
Wow. Brilliant.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's portfolio. This is work in progress. So we'll have this out soon.
Okay.
And I mean, I think we've eaten up a lot of time, but one last aspect we have is we recently released the same module for the US.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
so you can type, I mean, we are indexing data from the 10Ks, any US company.
Okay.
Few changes in the US because data is way, way more structured in the US. So it is much easier for us to manage
Yes.
compared to Indian reports. But
Yes.
like you can click on historic and we show you the last 3-4 trends of any pie charts over there. We'll do that in India soon.
Mhm.
Then you look at their operational metrics. We've got deep operational metrics. That means showing you their like proved reserves of this oil refining company or their daily production volume in Africa against competition. You know, so this data in the US is also difficult to find. So in case any investors are looking at that space as well, this will be a good platform to check out. But
Yeah, recently, I mean, we Siddharth and me put some of our money in the US, not all, but
Okay.
some. So it's kind of progressing with us.
yeah, so the
So
thing
is
is,
that the reason why you added the US companies features, or you had like a lot of users ask you, can
So it
boss,
was
we are doing
both.
US investing as well?
so we
It
had
Please
was
add
kind of
this.
both. So we
yeah,
talk and we invest. So I don't know what caused what, but we were always thinking that we want to invest there. So we
Okay.
because many things like I mean, what is a US company? Like Uber operates in India, but is a US company, but affects
Right.
India so much. So is it
Or
a
a
US
Google
company or
or a
not? Yeah,
Facebook
or a Google.
or a
So
Netflix.
so what is cool,
exactly.
yeah, what is cool, I mean, what we started noticing recently, Ruchik, is like we have a lot of overlapping things. Like, I mean, why we got it in the US is another matter. We started looking at the 10Ks also. So
Okay.
um, you can say suppliers of
No.
just as an example, right? So, or you're able to see Motherson Sumi. I mean, there's a lot of overlapping
Oh, okay.
sets between the two sides. You know, suppliers of Pepsi, for instance, or customers of someone.
Okay.
Like basically, many US companies per year we go there. So essentially, it's one giant grid, right? So I mean, we see a lot of sort of integration between the two at some point. But
Okay.
as we were studying US companies, what we noticed is their filings are very, very structured relative to India. And if I can index data from a Tata Motors report or a Maruti report, it should be possible for us to replicate the same in the US. So we started with this off in a small scale. Maybe
Yeah.
just 18 months this has been out. But
Okay.
So
keep
if you see
tracking.
India, we have a lot of tabs and a lot of functionality. In the US, we're just getting started, but we'll slowly catch up to the functionality in India.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Ruchik, I think we've eaten up way more time than anticipated. So, any questions you have for us?
Hey, that was
Ruchik,
an absolutely
Supriya.
amazing session. I think you just hit the nail on the head. We don't know where time flew by. It's been almost an hour, and I feel like we've just scratched the surface. I mean, your website, Tijori, has so many features, so many different insights that I feel I could sit here like for a few hours and just keep searching based on the ideas that I keep getting.
Thank you, Ruchik.
It's
And
a massive database. It has everything related to markets. So you can just sit here and scroll regarding any company, and you'll get all the information regarding that.
Thank you, Supreme.
what I really like is that it's not just the investors, but it's also so many other people that I can see now, that even like money managers or anyone who's related to the investment industry or
Right.
finance industry, they'll find this pretty useful.
Right.
I had one question. Are you planning to, or do you have any paid features or any premium features?
Oh yeah, this is an important aspect which we missed discussing. So the thing is, I mean, we actually started in end of 2018, 2019, and our first version was exactly like how it's in the US, just some random pie charts. So it's taken
Okay.
us, I mean, and we started off in 2019 with just some 100 companies. So it's taken us 1-2 years to at least be at a state where we can say that, okay, fine, now I'm confident my data is systematically being uploaded. I understand some amount of the issues. So at this stage, we will be moving to subscription services. So right now, everything on Tijori is free. So very
Okay.
soon, we will be moving the entire site into a paid version. So only interested users who subscribe will have access to some of these features. So
Okay.
that's something which we'll be building in the near future. So that's
Okay.
essentially our revenue model for this product.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for your time. Supriya, do you have any questions,
No,
or
I
shall
don't
I
have any
close?
questions, but thank you so much.
Thank you,
It
Siddharth.
was a very insightful session, and thank you so much for sharing your journey and explaining us your services with us. Thank you for taking out time.
Thank you, Ruchik. Thank you, Siddharth.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.